I am very honored to introduce Sridhar Ramaswamy. Sridhar oversees all of Google's ads and commerce products, which include search, display and video advertising, analytics, shopping, payments, and travel. Joining Google as an engineer since 2003, he's been an integral part of the growth of AdWords and Google's advertising business. Prior to joining Google, Sridhar was a director of engineering for the analytics platform at Epiphany. He also held research positions at Bell Labs, Lucent Technologies, and Bellcore. Sridhar earned a bachelor's degree in computer science from IIT Madras and his master's of science and PhD in computer science from Brown University. I'll add that without Sridhar, Google would have been just an excellent search engine. Sridhar Ramaswamy.
Thank you, Anjali. Good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here. I went to IIT Madras, as Anjali said. I was there from 85 to 89. And like I'm sure it's the case with many of you, it was a rather transformational experience for me. It took me over 2 years, I think, just to figure out how to get through a semester full of its exams and quizzes. But what I also remember about IIT Madras was not just the difficult academics, but my colleagues, my classmates, who were amazing in every respect, not just at academics, which many of them were, but we also had people that were just as good in sports, that were just as good with cultural activities. It was really, we had several Renaissance men there. And that was what was pretty amazing about being at IIT Madras. I also remember, our professors. I've gone back to meet some of them over the years. People like Kalyana Krishnan and Muthu Krishnan and Mahabala, who could have been there literally anywhere teaching in the world. These were people that had PhDs from the best schools here and elsewhere, but who chose to be in Madras to teach us. I think that's been pretty amazing. And of course, at Google, we have a number of amazing alumni from the various IITs. Of course, Anjali, who is, who plays a pivotal role within search, our best-known product. But also folks like Sundar Pichai, who heads up all of products at Google, or Pandu Nayak, another key engineer in the search team. And Shiv Venkatraman, who is VP of Ads Infrastructure and Payments at Google. So we've had a huge influence on companies like Google, which means, of course, that there is literally no argument that gets settled easily. We discuss every topic to death. Our founders exemplify this. They must have hung out with a lot of IITians. Because there's roughly no argument you can have with Larry or Sergey that does not go on for hours, with them taking extreme positions on every topic that you can think of. So we have deep connections, between the IITs and Google. The theme of this conference is, of course, Internet of People. Let's switch to the next slide, please. Over the years, especially the last few, I see that technology is getting more and more of a bad rap in press, within society. And part of what I want to talk about today is the positive influence that all of us can have in what technology does to society and to people. So the common themes that you hear nowadays are about technology dividing people, of putting us into cocoons. And the caricature is that of walking into a restaurant and seeing that everybody at a table is on their phones rather than talking to each other. But this is a choice that you and I can make about how technology influences us. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about all the positive things that companies like Google and others have done for society. Of course, Google started as a search engine with a lofty mission. Our founders, characteristically and not so humbly, said that their mission was to organize all of the world's information and make it available to everybody on the planet. Not just for a few, but for the entire planet. Let's call this a 15-year-old dream, has actually become largely successful. Herdsmen, standing in the Masai Mara with a cell phone where actually their networks are really good, has access to the same information that the president of this country would have had just a few years ago. This is a remarkable power of technology to make a difference in all our lives. And Google as a company didn't stop with web search. We said we want to bring similar information with maps, or satellite imagery, or images that Anjali has worked on for a very long time to everybody. I don't know how many of you have lived on the East Coast and have driven around in Boston. I've done a lot of that. And my most profound memories of driving in Boston are all about getting lost for hours at a time, going round and round. I went to Boston like a month ago, and lo and behold, I was no longer lost. My phone told me where to go. It would even route me around traffic jams. Again, that's the power of technology that is actually playing a very, very visible role in all our lives. We've clearly done other things. Again, enhancing communications between people, things like Gmail, things like YouTube, which revolutionized how people thought about video, and also things like Hangouts. It's been a less successful product, but all in the spirit of what technology can do to drive new forms of communication. I work, and who can forget things like Translate. I don't know how many of you use Translate, but it is an amazing tool, especially on the phone. And the ability to actually translate on the fly, or in the near future to be able to produce experiences where you actually speak to your phone in one language and have your phone translate into another language, which seemed like a dream 10 years ago, is now tantalizingly close. Again, these are things that felt impossible 10 years ago that technology is enabling for all of us today. I work in the ads team at Google. While we do less flashy things by way of what is visible to consumers, in our own way, we've had a massive impact on the economies of many countries and on the lives of many people. Google advertising drives over $500 billion of economic activity through the globe, and it really made advertising profoundly different from the kind that existed before search advertising came along. We, to this day, are incredibly proud of how relevant our advertising on search is. The number of queries for which we show ads, for example, has more or less remained constant at about 1/3 of the queries for the past 10 years. We are very thoughtful about what monetization means, about what advertising means. And of course, we've also made advertising democratic, where pretty much any advertiser with a limited budget and limited means can compete against practically anyone on the planet with an auction system. And right now, we are in the midst, of course, of a major, major revolution that's partially represented on, in this slide, which is, of course, the mobile revolution, which is profoundly changing all our lives. I can, sit here for pretty much an entire day telling you stats about what mobile is doing to all our lives. We have, one stat here, which is that 4/5 of the people, roughly, that walk into a store looking for a product end up pulling out their phone to check on something about the product. Is it the price? Is it reviews? It's literally become second nature. So much so that whenever we have a moment where we want to do something, whether we want to know the answer to something, whether we want to go somewhere, whether we want to learn how to tie a tie, which is one of the examples here, or we want to know how to tie a shoelace or fold a shirt, we turn to our phones in order to figure out how to do these things. And we in the ads team at Google are busy trying to figure out and of course stay relevant in this world that is changing incredibly rapidly. And so we see big opportunities for all of us that Google wants to play a role in, that in my mind are still completely open areas in which new billion and trillion dollar companies are waiting to be built. Mobile, in my mind, is the big link between what we do online and what is around us, the offline commerce, which by some estimates is still over 90% of all the commerce that happens in the world today. And with products like local shopping, which show you not just what products are available online, but also what products are available near you, we are changing what advertising means. And of course, innovative companies like Macy's are busy trying to figure out how they play a big role in this new and mobile world. Everybody by now understands that mobile drives a lot of offline activity, but is one of those areas in which things like dollars spent on mobile, advertising dollars spent on mobile, haven't really kept pace with the amount of time you and I spend on mobile, which of course represents a massive opportunities for companies like Google, but also many, many other companies out there in the world. And shifting gears away from Google, what we have seen over the last 10 years is, of course, the rise of the sharing economy. These are, some of these are going to be amazing companies, the icons of our future, and they've had a massive imprint on all our lives. Companies like Uber introduce amazing efficiency. None of us use our cars that much. I drive my car maybe 30 minutes a day, and the rest of the time it just sits somewhere. So companies like Uber make it possible to utilize resources just a whole lot more efficiently. And so do companies like Airbnb. And for every company that I have represented here, there are a dozen companies out in the valley that many of you know about that want to introduce the concept of sharing economy. Oh, I don't know, to parking, which is what Lux Valley is doing, art to food. In my mind, this really represents an exciting new frontier where many, many companies and fortunes and utility is really being built. And no one can talk about technology over the last 10 years without obviously talking about the rise of social networks and the impact that they've had on all our lives. They've truly revolutionized it. A lot of us spend a lot of time on Facebook, for example, even though seeing the latest pictures of your uncle at the beach is not always what you want to see. But they make it possible for us to stay in touch with our loved ones, even if they're far away. They make it possible for us to stay connected, even when we're separated by time and geography and many, many other things. And these companies are already having a big impact. Many of them are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And the chapter is yet to be written on social networks, driven by the rise in concern about things like privacy. There is an increasing tendency towards ephemeral content, again, typified by the likes of Snapchat or Secret or Whisper. And these companies are also clearly doing well. I think there is a lot more to come in terms of communications and connecting people. I'm a big believer in the rise of ephemeral networks of people as opposed to just ephemeral content. For example, I'm sure many of you have been on a vacation with your spouse and children and wish there were a trivial way for you to pool all your pictures together or pool all your experiences together to create something that's coherent, stuff that's pretty hard today. Or walked into a conference room with 5 or 6 people and again wish there was something that got set up quickly that let you exchange information between yourselves. Or if you're the kind that goes to Home Depot, which I do sometimes, for example, where I routinely, hopelessly am lost trying to figure out something that I want to do, it sure would be nice if there were a trivial and automatic way for me to get in touch with the store reps in the store that help me out with something, as opposed to, again, wandering aimlessly trying to figure out where someone is that could actually help you. So there are a lot of exciting possibilities in terms of what other companies can be created in, in this space. So, that's roughly the theme that I want to leave you with, which is that technology can have a huge positive impact on all of our lives, that it is very, very early still in terms of the companies, the possibilities, the products that have been created in the space. And the next time someone talks to you about how technology is dividing us and is isolating us, I think we should all remember the positive influence that it can have on all of us. And to me, that's really what this conference is all about, kind of a set of people that are incredibly passionate about technology on the kind of uses that they can bring together, that can actually bring people together. And of course, we are all bound by the common link that we have with the IITs, which are places that proudly celebrate technology and what it can do for all our lives. And a conference like this that brings all of us together, where we can share in our history, knowledge, and wisdom. Thank you. I think we now switch to questions.
Thank you, Sridhar. So a bunch of questions have come up if you have a few minutes. The first one is related to monetizing challenges.
Yep.
I'll combine a couple of questions here. What are the biggest challenges Google faces from a monetizing perspective? But a related question is, somebody's implying the challenge that seems like Google is losing out on mobile ad space compared to Facebook and others. So if you can touch on those two. And
yeah. Absolutely. Every company faces challenges as the world around it changes in a big way. Just 2 years ago, most of Facebook's revenue came from desktop. Most of their usage came from desktop, and they made a massive pivot. What people forget about Google are the amazing consumer properties, including mobile search that we have, and the power that the mechanisms that Google has when it comes to doing the activities that matter. So whenever you have activities with intent, as I said, when you want to buy something or when you want to go somewhere, when you want to figure out the answer to something, you turn to Google, you turn to YouTube, you turn to search. And as long as many consumers remember Google and searching when it comes to intent, we'll do fine from a monetization perspective. Do we wish we were more successful in the social space? Yeah. Absolutely. We like all success, but that doesn't mean that this is that there is just a single winner game. I think it's actually pretty healthy that there are multiple companies that are competing hard to deliver value to you and me. So I think overall it looks pretty good.
Okay. So speaking of the social space, when you were referring to social media, you didn't make any reference to Google+. Was that a conscious omission?
Yeah, well, Google Plus was an interesting experiment. It didn't pan out as well as we would have hoped to. And it was also clear that we acknowledged that we were heavy-handed in how we tied Google Plus together and what value it did. And especially in the mobile world, we have also realized that it's much more thoughtful to be clean-cut about the kind of functionality that you want to offer to people. So we separated out Hangouts. Google Plus continues to exist as a product. The very successful Photos app that got launched last month is actually an offshoot of the Google Plus overall project. So we don't emphasize Google Plus as it existed, say, last year as much, but many of the ideas around how do you enable better sharing, how do you enable connectivity between people are alive and well at Google. We make mistakes, we learn, we fix them, we move on.
Okay. So here's a question that's trending, and I love this one because I'm big on company culture. But one of the things that was stellar about Google was the do no evil mission.
Yep.
So how does it maintain that mission today with the size and scale and the zillion things you guys are chasing?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I think my first answer is really that company culture is something that needs to be actively cultivated on an ongoing basis. This is not something that you can put on a placard once and live by it. So when I talk to my teams, for example, in the ad space, they'll often tell me, say, what the privacy expert said or what the lawyer said in terms of what they could do. And my question inevitably to them is, what do you feel is the right thing to be doing? If you were the user, what would you want the experience to be? So we stress that a lot. But on the other hand, I don't necessarily think that Google entering a space or competing with an existing industry or creating new ones is evil, in and of itself. And neither do I think that our success as an advertising company needs to be the organizing principle for every single thing that we do. It's not like the Nest team does not think about advertising. Even something like the Shopping Express team, which I run, which I hope some of you use, does not think about advertising. These are entirely new business models. Okay. Advertising has been very powerful for us in products like Google Search, which I'm very proud of because it is available literally to everybody. We don't make search for rich people. We don't make search for just the US. We make Google Search for every person on the planet. But it's important to realize that advertising is not necessarily something that should be the basis for every single thing that Google does. And once you have that clarity, that different products can have different goals and missions, then the don't be evil again begins to make a lot of sense in terms of how you just organize yourself.
Okay. So in your last earnings report, you have a new CFO
That's
who
right.
started commenting on expense management and things like that. That was a uniquely different kind of earnings call for Google. What does that mean for the organization?
There's a lot of continuity at Google. I think it's one of those things that can get overinterpreted. We always have to be thoughtful about cost. The amount of capital expenses we have for machines is staggering by most accounts. We about these things. I think it's one of those things where people anticipate change because there's a new person, but there is more continuity than you think. We always like to be thoughtful about where we put our money and what gives return and what does not.
Okay, great. And what are some of the up-and-coming innovations in mobile advertising?
Two things that excite me a lot, as I said, are how mobile advertising ties to local commerce. I talked about local shopping here a little bit, which is really around how do you find products around you. But looking farther ahead and doing things like what is a combination of something like Shopping Express, which does same day and overnight deliveries with mobile, how do you make that scale is something that would be, I think, very exciting. Things that happen in payments, early days in payments, Google has had a checkered history in payments, I think can have a potentially positive impact down the line. I'm very excited by brand advertising. YouTube gets a crazy amount of usage on mobile. So we talk to a lot of brand advertisers about moving their dollars from offline, from TV advertising, which is literally hundreds of billions of dollars, in the globe, over to YouTube and to mobile. So those conversations go pretty well. So I would say brand and local commerce are two of the most exciting things happening on mobile for us.
Fabulous. And the last question, how does Google decide on projects like the self-driving cars? Is it Larry and Sergey debating amongst themselves or other people involved?
So, new people especially always come and ask me, so what is your grand 5-year plan? And they're very disappointed when I tell them there isn't a plan.
Okay.
So we do a lot of, there's a lot of independent decisions that get made. They tend to be opportunistic, both in terms of the initial investment and then in terms of how quickly we expand things. Google's methodology, unlike, say, that of Apple, which is very thoughtful and methodical about what they go into, is much more that we see an opportunity, We go try something out, typically at a small scale, and when there are glimmers of success, you put more into it, you make it big. This is literally how Android was born, or how Maps was born. They were small, they were tiny. We saw something that was amazing, and then we put a lot more resources into it. It's an imperfect approach, but it's one that's kind of worked well for us.
Yep.
So there is some plan, but there is less of a plan than you think.
All right. Thank you, Sridhar.
Thank you very much.
It's been a fascinating discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending your time. Thank you.